Hi friends, I'm Rick Ufford Chase, Mayor of Newport, Vermont, and this is Newport Notes with Rick. We use this time often to check in on the work that's going on in the city, especially the work that the City Council is doing and the work of the special task forces that we've set up. And I'll remind the folks who are watching that we currently have 4 special task forces. One that has 2 of our members here today is called Financial Reporting and Fiscal Practices. There's a second task force on water and sewer issues. They're meeting tonight. There's a third task force on housing insecurity, public encampments, and community safety, and that group met a week ago and is meeting again next coming Wednesday. They meet every 2 weeks. And finally, there's a new task force that just had its first meeting about 10 days ago on long-range strategic planning for the fire department. So each one of those task forces is chaired by a member of City Council, and our council is working hard, not just on these task forces, but on a wide variety of other issues to try and make sure that we are paying attention to all the things that need to be paid attention to. So the purpose of our conversation today is that I have invited 2 members of the Financial Reporting and Fiscal Practices Task Force, Laurie Grimm and Hal Rodenberg, to come and meet with us, and for the 3 of us to just have a conversation about the items that are coming up on the special ballot initiative that is what's called a town meeting, a special town meeting on August 12th that will be like an election, except that what we're voting for is not people, but rather permission to respond to the financial crisis in a variety of ways. And we're going to talk about that this afternoon. I have bragged often about this committee, this task force, and the work that they have done. And I feel fabulous about really hard effort. This group met weekly for about 3 months and has met 2 or 3 times in the last month to try and take on a wide variety of challenges. And it appears that our list grows longer, not shorter. So we are not looking at closing this task force down anytime soon. We're 4 months in and we've still got a lot of work to do. So I might just ask Laurie first and then Hal to just give a brief summary of how long you've lived in Newport, what you do, kind of what's your background that brought you to the task force.
Sure. So I've been actually in Newport 19 years this summer. And I've been active in different things in the community ever since I moved here. Lots of the community forums that have been held. And I just felt at this point, the mayor came to me and, I wanted to do this work with the financial committee. And he asked me specifically if I would take this one on. And I think it's really important. We have to pay attention to what's going on because, taxes are everything, and we need to make sure that our city's running correctly. So.
And just a word, Laurie, about your background and why I was tapping you in particular on this task force.
Well, currently I'm a business analyst for a Farm Credit Bank in South Carolina, formerly with a local Farm Credit Agricultural Association here in the Newport area. And I have that background. I'm not an accountant. I play one on Friday afternoons at 4 o'clock at our meetings, but I pay attention, and that's kind of the point. I've been in business. I've worked for the local hospital. I've done a lot of different things. I'm involved in volunteer work, and it's just a matter of paying attention. So that's what I do in my business analyst job. I want to learn. I do IT as well with the programs that I work with in my job. So it's important to know what our city IT programs and financial programs can do for us.
Thank you. Hal, can you say a word about how long you've been around and what you've done in the past?
Yeah, so Hal Rodenberg. I am a new resident to Newport, lived here since September of 2024. And in our process of relocating and moving to Newport, we'd identified we wanted to be part of a small town, a smaller community, and having a role in it is, in our opinion, a critical part of making it a successful place. So my background is pretty varied, finance operations, and now I do software sales, but have a master's in finance and spent 5 years in New York as an analyst. So really interested in, my overarching goal here was just to get involved in the community and help give back in some way, because kids are out of the house and gives us a little free time to do things that are not just immediately focused on ourselves.
Love it.
So that's what brought me here.
You know, I put the word out to the entire task force to see who might join me this afternoon, but I was actually really pleased when the two of you said yes, because I think it's representative of the kind of response we've gotten to the community need right now. A combination of people who have been around a long time and have cared a very long time, and some newer folks who have found really strong common ground with one another working on these issues together, not just on this task force, but also on the water and sewer task force. We've been experiencing that too. So thank you both.
Sure.
So here's what I recommend. I'm wondering if we might just review each of the 5 articles that will be voted upon, each of the initiatives that will be voted upon in August. And rather than my reading all 5 of them, I wonder if we might just take turns. I'll do the first one, Laurie, maybe you could do the second one. Hal, you could grab the third one, and we'll just rotate through and describe the 5 different things that are on the ballot initiative so that people have an idea of where we're starting. And then we can talk a little bit about the things that have come up for us as we've been working on how to explain this, kind of why we've made these decisions, why we've encouraged the council to go down the path of putting these items up for the community to consider by ballot, and anything that we've heard in the community we'd like to share.
Sure.
Okay. So the first article of the 5 that we'll ask voters to consider on August 12th is a question around the fire truck. And those of you who are long-timers in Newport, or even relatively recent, but if you've been here 3 or 4 years, you'll remember that there was a question on that was put up to voters, I think it was in 2022. Mm-hmm. And that question was, would the voters be willing to go into debt to the tune of $800,000 in order to purchase a new fire truck that our fire department needed? Voters passed that ballot initiative overwhelmingly. And we actually, the city, long before I became involved, went through the mechanics of ordering that truck, sent a team to, I think it was one of the Dakotas, South or North Dakota, to look at the truck, and decided that it did not meet the specifications of what we had ordered as a community, and they actually refused to take delivery on the truck, the first one. So they went back to the drawing board, did a new order, and in the process expanded a number of the things that they decided they really ought to have on that truck, and then got the truck made again. And I'm told that we should be taking delivery of that second order. This time the truck will come through, and that we should expect to see it here in our fire station sometime by early to mid-fall. So that means we're going to have to actually pay for it.
Yes.
And the price tag on it at this point is going to be somewhere around $865,000, maybe as much as $875,000. Mm-hmm. And so this bond initiative asks for permission to borrow not just the $800,000 already approved, but an additional $75,000 to make sure that we can cover the cost of the truck.
Right.
Okay, that's the first one.
Right.
Laurie, you want to describe the second one for us?
Sure. So this is a very similar situation. So in 2021, the voters of the city of Newport voted for a new water tower, and to the what was to be about a $4.985 million bond, less any grants, ARPA funds, anything else we used. And what has happened is that unfortunately at some point in the using of the ARPA funds and we got a grant, we also used a revolving line of credit, a construction line of credit, to actually build the water tower. And somewhere along the line, the actual application for the bond was missed and was not presented to the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank. So when we went to them to get the funding that we needed to pay off the construction line of credit this fall, they didn't have the information. So
I'll just say about that, I felt kind of silly because I didn't know anything about this world really until a few months ago.
Right.
And so when we were on that call, I think you were on it too, that first one, but I said to them, we'd really like to be in the bond pool for August because it looks like we're going to come due on this thing now and we're going to have to pay off the line of credit. And they said, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I was so embarrassed because I don't know that I thought really about what would have to go into getting it. It's a loan. You have to work with a bank to get a loan, right? You can't just say, give me my money now.
Right.
So really what they're doing is saying, yeah, we need to have the information so that we can approve that loan.
Right. So at this point, where we are is that our water tower is just about done. And my understanding is, barring any other unforeseen circumstances, the end of August or something, early fall, the water tower actually come online. And by October, I think it is, we have to pay back close to $3 million, or I'm not sure the exact amount of money, for the construction line of credit.
Right.
And so the situation is the city by charter can only borrow funds for up to a year for something like this. We are not allowed to extend anything. And so we have to pay that money back. So what's happened is we have to go to the voters to ask for what we're terming a bridge loan. The voters have already voted, given us permission, but in order for us to make this short-term financing situation happen, we have to come back to the voters and ask. And the reason is because we need the money now, and then we will be getting the application to the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank. And what we're hoping is that our application will go into the pool late winter, early spring, if not by next summer. And then it will go into a long-term note. And so we aren't asking the voters for more money. We're just asking for approval to go out and get this short-term bridge loan. Again, I want to make it very clear. We have already been given permission by the voters for the bond. And what we're looking at is not $4.985 million. We're really looking, this is specifically, the amount is $3 million. And it is possible that by the time we get to it, it will be less than $3 million. We're not really sure yet, 100%.
It can't be more.
But
we
it
haven't
can't
asked
be
the voters
more.
for
We
permission.
will not be asking for more. It's up to $3 million. So please understand, that's what we want to make very clear. It has already been approved, but we need this approval to do this short-term, what we're calling a bridge loan.
Yeah, bankers are calling this a loan in anticipation of bond income.
Right.
Right. So everybody recognizes that our goal is to go out to the bond bank and arrange this longer-term note, and we're just trying to bridge the gap.
Right.
So really, the second one I hope is pretty uncontroversial. It's just pretty straightforward.
Right. Yeah.
However, Hal, let's take on number three.
Hal gets the fun one.
Well, number 3 is all about cash flow, which was a big thing early on in our meetings. And I think it highlights some of the things that will come out of this special council meeting or special advisory group, that understanding where you're at, knowing how to project, forecast numbers is one of the big results that I think we're going to get out of everything. But this one represents a request for up to $1.8 million so we can manage our cash flow and operating budget information. So at this point, what we're talking about is that this was caused by some misses in our budgeting practices. So we have about a $200,000 overestimate of income that was not caught previously, and it's accumulated over a number of years. That associated with some deficit spending and things that have gone on interdepartmentally between water and sewer, fire departments. There's a little bit here and there and everywhere. What we're looking to do is put in a $1.8 million bond so we can shore up our cash flow needs. And at the end of the day, our goal is to turn short-term debt into long-term debt and make it more manageable so we can address it as a group long-term and on more favorable terms.
So we're specifically asking on this one for $1.8 million to be played out probably over roughly 20 years or a little less maybe.
Yeah, I think that's still in play about whether it's a 5-year, 10-year, 20-year. We have to figure out what's going to be the most appropriate and palatable solution.
And the voters are just being asked, do we have permission to borrow up to 1.8 for up to 20 years in order to make the numbers work on what's manageable for the taxpayers?
Exactly.
Right.
Okay. All right, so that's Article 3. Article 4 is similar, but it's related entirely to the sewer budget. And here we have an issue where what we're asking the voters for is $1 million, the ability to borrow $1 million, again, for up to 20 years, depending on how we work out the terms with the bank. And the reason for that is because over the last number of years, this goes back more than a couple of years for sure, there has been a practice that was allowed by mayor and council and other leaders in the city to continue over time of allowing deficit spending in the sewer budget. And the problem, of course, is that if you spend more money than you take in, eventually you run through any reserve that you had and you start deficit spending, and that's where we are now. So this $1 million represents on our balance sheet, there's a line that says due to others on the balance sheet. And it means basically that the sewer fund owes $1 million to the general operating fund that has tried to cover the deficit spending in the sewer fund over this number of years. And we're asking voters for permission to try and to borrow the money necessary, pay back the general operating fund, remove that obligation of $1 million from the balance sheet on the sewer fund, and then, of course, we'll talk more about this, change our fiscal practice so that we are not overspending beyond our means going forward. And I will say that the Water and Sewer Task Force has worked really hard on this set of questions and has adjusted our rates for the coming year so that we are not in a deficit spending mode. We're charging enough from our ratepayers to make sure that we're covering the bills. And then let's see, Laurie, you want to do that last one?
Absolutely. So Article 5 is actually related to Article 3. And I'll just explain briefly that at some point, starting around in the budgeting process for fiscal year 2018-19, there was a misplacement, I don't really know what to call it, of revenue that is received from the state that is directly related to the municipal tax adjustment. And it was actually moved from the revenue line in the actuals for 2017, 2018 into the budget line for 2018 or 2017, 2018, excuse me. And that has continued, and that made up about 1.2 million of that 1.8 that we're asking for in Article 3.
Can I just restate that?
Yes, absolutely.
So just to be clear, what's going on here is income got double counted.
Yes, it did.
That's the simplest way that I've found to describe it. Because we were already counting this as a whole in our income from property taxes, but there's a portion of our property tax that gets diverted to the state,
Right.
and the state writes a check back to the city that's called the municipal tax adjustment or something like that. And we somehow, in our budgeting beginning around 2018-19, we began counting that income from the state as if it was new and separate revenue.
That's right.
And that meant that we were not then, we were counting on, by nowadays it's something like $200,000 a year. We act as if that's new income, but it's not. It's already been counted once.
Right.
That's how the problem happened.
That's correct. And so what happens is that, in the end, we see all these things that we're asking for, and our treasurer's office comes up with, this is how much money we have to take in taxes, divides it out by the grand list, and that's how you find out what your taxes are. So the situation is with Article 5 is that when the budgets were done for this fiscal year, FY26, there was $220,000 that was basically double counted, as Rick said. So the taxpayers were not asked for those funds. So what we're asking is for the taxpayers technically to give our treasurer the ability to go back, add the 220 to the tax amount we need, the revenue needed, and then divide it back out by the grand list. We believe, and this is where we think we are, we believe that's going to be about $150 extra on a $200,000 property. That all these calculations, come into play at some point, but that's been around the number that we're thinking. So that's what we're asking. We need to just add $220,000 to the baseline revenue that we need to operate the city for this fiscal year.
I think that's as good a description as we could probably hope for right now. So I would just like to ask if you all have what I really want to know is what's your experience of the task force been? Because Hal came in literally not knowing anything about the city and its finances. Laurie had been watching the financial situation and had been, among others in the community, raising concerns and questions about it for some time. But I suspect neither of you, like me, had any real idea of just how challenging and nuanced the situation, or how complex the situation was. So I'd love to just hear personally, like, what's your experience been of trying to work on this task force, and also how you make sense of it in your head and try and describe it to other people when they ask you about it.
I'll jump in
Please.
on this
Please.
one. I think the first thing that was abundantly clear to the entire group was the big question mark is, what does this mean? How was this done? Kind of that background. And that was kind of the first thing we worked on as a group, was not focusing on the people involved and things of that nature, but let's try and make sense of what we have. What do our records mean? What do our numbers mean? Things of that nature. And that's really highlighted and brought to action certain things of working with our accounting software providers, things of that nature. So really that focus on, let's figure out what we know or what we don't know. That was kind of the first thing we dug into. Once we get that, then it's like, then we can start looking at what are options, ideas, ways to solve problems. And that's been kind of my biggest focus. Is I'm not so worried about who caused it or what happened, because at the end of the day, our biggest court is going to be the Court of Public Appeal, or opinion in this case. That's what's going to happen when we finally figure out this is how it happened and everything of that nature. But let's right now, as a group, try and solve the problems to the best of our ability,
Right.
and make the community desirable. I mean, and that's where I come from as a new resident. Let's make this community as desirable for everybody that's looking at moving to Vermont or lives in Vermont and is looking for a place to raise their family. This is the place to be. That's been my overarching goal.
Absolutely.
Laurie?
I didn't have a clue what to expect, although I knew it was going to be a big job. Having sat in that room for a number of years, watched, paid attention, wondered out loud, questioned, had conversations with people, and it's a big job. And so I knew that, or I really believed that the first thing we had to do was figure out how to get ourselves out of this deficit situation the best way possible. Once we discovered things like this double entry on the revenue, and then what do you do with it? Where do you go? And one of the things we found out is there's 3 ways for us to deal with that, and some of them aren't pretty. But the idea is, for me, it was really, let's dig in and see what we can do to help. I think we have good people in our city government. Mistakes were made, whatever the situations have been. Those people who have been around for 10 or 15 years can go back and they'll know who was doing what, when, where, and how. And it's like what Hal said. We have to fix this. We don't need to concentrate on the past, except we know that we can pinpoint where some things happened, where some things didn't happen, and then take our next step, which we're really actually already doing in asking the questions. What are these invoices for? How did we come up with that budget? Where do we start with our budgets? We have to be able to go back and fix the issues so that we don't. Someone said today on Facebook, great place. We're at $2 million deficit today, and we're going to be at a $3 million deficit a year from now. And I went, no, we're not, because this is our goal. We're not stopping here. Our goal is to work with city officials, with the mayor, with the city manager's office that we're hoping to have filled very soon, and with competent people. And that's our goal. So it's a process. It was a big learning curve, and I think that we're all willing to move it forward the best way we can and do whatever we can do to help to keep us going.
I think that's something else that's really important, is to realize that collectively we kind of got to this, or the community got to this situation as a whole. So now we have to, as a group, kind of figure out how's the best way to get out of it. And I think there's going to be multiple parts to it. One is understanding where we're going and how long that's going to take. So that could be what we're talking about, the 5, 10, 20-year, what's the best approach and timeline. And then how do we solve it? It's like anything else within a family situation. We're going to have to decide, do we economize in certain places? Are there ways that we can increase revenue in other places? But at the end of the day, we're going to have, our goal has to be to have a little bit, we have to have some buffer so that we can pay off our existing debt. So that's going to be that's kind of the next step of this whole process. And what we've done here is we're building a way to give ourselves time and available and a plan that we can execute against.
So I want to give an example that's been useful to me as I've tried to describe this to folks. And that is, I've known families who have spent beyond their means on credit card debt and driven a credit card debt pretty high. And of course, anybody who has been in that situation knows that that interest just gets higher and higher the more you do it. And so, you end up with interest rates that can be running you, 15, 18, 20, 22, 25%, depending on just how deep you've gotten. And I've been in situations where then we say, okay, well, the best way out of this is to borrow at a lower rate of interest, usually against home equity, right, is the way that I've seen it done, and pay down that debt, which is a smart move. But if you don't then change your spending habits and you spend that credit, if you max that credit card out all over again, you haven't solved any problem. And at the end of the day, you end up with a house, for instance, that's underwater, right? It's not worth
Absolutely.
as much as you're indebted on it, because you've driven up that debt so much by trying to pay off your credit card, right? And so the trick here for City of Newport, and I think I have 100% confidence, I'll say it that way, that with the help of the 2 task forces and the city council that's paying a lot of attention, that we are changing the practice so that we are going to be having a budget that absolutely balances, and we will be watching that budget every month all year long, so that if we've been wrong about something we guessed on in our budget, we make an adjustment somewhere else, and we do not finish the year in a deficit mode again. So that's the goal, right? We don't just borrow money and then keep on going as if everything's great. We borrow that money, manage that long-term, that accumulated debt over the long term, and then change our practices so that we do not spend beyond our means.
I think that one of the things that I have continually heard in our task force from the water and sewer meetings that I pretty much attend, most of them, is that especially, and I'm not saying this is where we're going, but so I heard our Director of Public Works a few weeks ago say that he is at the end of several very large projects, the water tower, the traffic lights on the causeway, and so we want, at the moment, we don't have any like super large projects. So the fact is that he will be able to divert his staff to probably doing some things that maybe we've been waiting for a little while to do. One thing is the water meters. And so, we can do that. We've discussed the fact, do we have to have a new police car every 3 years? I don't know. I'm not going to tell our chief,
7 years,
or
just
7
to be
years.
clear.
7 years, excuse me. I'm not going to tell our chief what we need to do, but we need to look. It has been asked, do we have to take delivery of this fire truck? Well, the fact is, in this case, yes, we do, because it was ordered, it was paid for, voted on, and those kind of things. But what's our next step? Can we push a police car out an extra year? Can we push a fire truck out an extra couple of years? I don't know. I'm just using these as possible examples. So it is, do we tighten our belts a little bit? Do we really have to pay attention to spending? It's all of this, and what we're using our employees for. If we have a vacant position, does it need to be filled right off? It's just little things that we're looking for that may help us get to where we need to be.
Along those lines, I just want to say that I've been asked repeatedly, is there a spending freeze in the city of Newport? And my answer is, in the traditional way of understanding a spending freeze, absolutely not. Because a spending freeze means you take all of the room for discretion about what's actually necessary away from the most important people in the room who are making decisions. And to tell our rec department in the middle of their busy season that there's a spending freeze and they can't spend any more money is ludicrous, right? And that's just one example among many. On the other hand, every week I'm meeting with our department heads, and every week we're talking about where can we cut. Is there stuff that we can slow our spending on? Do we have to fill that position right away? And so we are constantly making those kinds of judgments to make sure that we're being thoughtful and careful about those, where we're going.
And that seems to be something that's very new and has been highlighted is scrutiny. That there wasn't a lot of scrutiny by there wasn't a task force like this. It wasn't an agenda item on the city council meetings that it's going to become one of those regular things. And you get it for, those of us that have worked in finance, what gets measured gets done and gets, tracked. So now it's going to be a big thing, and we're going to try and simplify some of the practices around, how things are allocated or they're budgeted, so that, let's get for real, the city council is not composed of people that have decades of experience in governance and city, and politics and things like that, and practices. It's the members of the community. So we have to simplify it so everybody, not only can the people involved with it can understand it, but everybody in the community can understand it. And I think that's one of the other big things that's exciting about what's going on here.
That brings me to, I want to just talk a little bit about Chip Stearns. Because one of the best decisions that got made in this process, and really I guess it was the first decision the first recommendation that this task force made to City Council, was that we needed some outside help. And we turned to NEMRIC, the New England Municipal Resource Center, which provides software that does the financial accounting for something like 98% of the municipalities in the state of Vermont. We were using it as well, though we were using an older version that was not online. And so we went to NEMRIC and said, first of all, can we get online? And secondly, what are the tools in NEMRIC that we're not currently using that would help us to track these things? And by the time we were done our first conversation, it was clear that not only were we not using the tools in NEMRIC efficiently or effectively, or at all in some instances, right? And someone said it's as if we were using NEMRIC as a glorified check writing software instead of using the financial power that it brings. And so one of the things they told us was, well, I don't know if you know this, but we provide consulting services, financial consulting services, to cities in your position. When you lose someone who's your financial consultant, we're prepared to step in. And so on this task force's recommendation, the council voted almost immediately to hire NEMRIC, and it turned into a relationship that's gotten to be very close with Chip Stearns, who is our consultant from NEMRIC, and he's spending a lot of time on this. And many of the things that we have found and that we are now trying to address in terms of how we got to the situation we are in has come from a very deep dive that Chip has done, primarily starting with our balance sheets, to make sure that when we look at the balance sheets for the city, we know exactly what's going on and what we have and what we owe, right? What's sitting in our bank account right now. And Chip is the one who's really sorting those things out for and with us. So he'll be here actually next week in person for the first time as the auditors come in to work on the audit for 24-25. And I should say a word about that too. The audit is its own set of challenges, right? Because some of what we are finding, if we had been reading the audits more carefully or in a more savvy way,
and understanding what the auditors were actually looking at.
And understanding what they were looking at and understanding the implications, we probably would have caught some of these things earlier. And to be fair, some people in the community were doing their level best to do that. And so I don't want to imply that no one was paying attention. I do want to say that I don't think that our city council was given the right training and the right support to fully understand and appreciate the depth of the problem that was highlighted by some of the audits, or that was highlighted that would have been highlighted if they'd been getting regular financial reports from our staff. So I feel good about the way in which we're making those changes as well. And in the long run, we are not worried. The truth is, the city is not we are not over leveraged at this point. We can manage the debt that we're taking on. But if we don't do something now, well, to be fair, if we hadn't done something by June 30th of this last year, we were unable to pay key bills,
Yes.
and we would have been in default. And because with Chip's help, we were able to find out kind of how to consolidate all of our various bank accounts and how to manage our way through that process, and then how to structure these series of ballot initiatives.
Right.
I really feel confident that we're going to pull out of this.
Yeah. I want to say that I've had several people ask, what about your treasurer's office? How come, what are they doing? And, I just want to speak to this because I think in every office, wherever you are, the people that are doing the job are doing the best job that they can. And someone said to me, well, how come they haven't had any training? And why didn't, the last mayor or the one before that or the city manager or whatever? So sometimes people go into a job and they do the job. They're good at what they do. And this is what they do. They're trained. Our people in our city manager's office really have been in here for a long time. I'm one of those people that will open up a new computer program. I do this with my own job, and I literally spend time going through each section, what's there, what does it do, I read all the help material, but that's just me. And so I'm not going to say that they have done anything wrong. Plus, the way that Newport operates is typically our city manager's office handles a portion of the accounting from the budgeting and those kind of things.
Planning and forecasting.
And the planning and the forecast, all that kind of stuff. And the coding of the financial stuff that comes from the department heads flows through the city manager's office and then back down to the treasurer's office where it's entered into the computer system. If it's not coded correctly, if it's not put to the right budget line, if whatever the situation is, and it gets back down to the clerk treasurer's office, they are simply entering the information that they've been given. And so, I think that what's happened with Chip is really a godsend. I mean, he can do training with them. He has been able to open up information within the system that we can now use. The budgeting, you shared with us that we discovered that we can actually do our budgeting right in NEMRIC without doing it in a separate spreadsheet. We didn't know that before. And if we did know that, nobody here currently had that ability.
Right.
And so he has been able, I've been asked, why did we have to hire a consultant? Why are we paying somebody else when our treasurer should be able to do it? Well, it just is what it is. And sometimes you need the person from the outside to bring a fresh set of eyes, and especially someone like Chip. He's had, if I'm not mistaken, he actually not only works for NEMRIC, I think he set up our system when it was
in
first.
1996, he wrote the current chart of accounts
Yes.
that our general ledger still uses.
That's right. That's
and
right.
So we're overdue for a reformation on
yes.
that.
And he's also served in municipal government,
That's
I believe, in a couple city management for the town he lives in. So we have someone with really great experience here that can help us. So
I think what you've described is that there were a lot of people have individual roles inside of our systems, but we haven't done a great job of having an overarching view of it in the recent past, and the recent past being several years. So I think we can get that solved, and in the, to try and keep things moving along, I just, from a new resident's point of view, I feel that we're making the right steps to do the right things, and it gives me a lot of confidence in our decision to move here. These kind of actions, and I think it'll have positive impact for other things that are concerning to the community. Because if we can show that we have our books together and we have a plan, and you know what, having a plan is what it's all about from outside perspective of investment, of support, of those actions. If we have a plan and we can work towards it, a lot of positive things are going to happen.
I'm going to use that as a segue to kind of wrap us up then, because I think that's exactly right, Hal, and I want to make clear that if you've been watching, kind of lurking in the shadows and watching these videos, all of our city council meetings and the task force meetings and my Newport notes, and there are lots of opportunities through NEK-TV to kind of keep up with what's going on. But if you've been lurking and you feel like you've got something to offer, now's the time, because Newport is on the move. And there's no doubt that we are in the process of turning this around, and also no doubt that everyone can play a role in this process. At some level, in some way, everyone can be a part of it. So if you'd like to know more about opportunities, first, you might start by just coming in person to some of the council meetings and getting a sense of how it operates. And I have hours every Monday afternoon from 4 to 5:30 where I'm available if anybody wants to come and chat. And I'm always willing to set a time to go have a cup of tea with somebody and learn about what their background and their interests are and how we might take advantage of that more fully and make people feel as if they're genuinely contributing, because we need their help. Mm-hmm. So all of that is true. If you're particularly interested in learning more about the ballot initiatives, they are available online. It's easy to find them. You just go to the city website, which is newportvermont.org, and look under the city council agendas. Actually, you don't even need to do that right now. There's a homepage announcement if you just scroll down on the homepage, and it will give you a link to the actual document for the frequently asked questions. And there will be a public forum Monday night, the 28th.
Yes.
The 28th, this coming Monday. It will be held at 6 p.m. over at the North Country Career Center, which is the building immediately beside the high school, North Country Union High School. And we'll have light refreshments there, and we'll stay until people are done asking questions. So if you would like to come have more conversation in person, you are absolutely welcome and encouraged to come be a part of that. There will, of course, also be a regular city council meeting for information, kind of a pre-town hall, if you will, on Monday night, the 11th of August at our normal time. And that meeting will be in preparation for the ballot initiative on the next day, on Tuesday the 12th. So that's, I think, everything. Anything else the two of you want to add?
No?
I just want to say, really, come. You know, we are there, believe me. 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon was, not what any of us thought we would be doing on a summer afternoon, Friday at 4 o'clock. But we are there in the city council chambers, and you are more than welcome to come. And if you have questions, if you want us to check something or dig into something, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, those meetings have been remarkably open. So even if you're not sitting at the table with the task force members, we've been treating the folks who come, who are community residents, as if they are full and participative members in the process.
Yeah, it's not a city council meeting. We don't have to follow the Robert's Rules of Order.
We do not. That's right. Though we try to keep some level of
Decorum.
And order in the midst of chaos.
Right.
So, all right, that's it. My thanks, as always, to NEK-TV that goes out of its way so far to make it possible to get the word out about things that are going on in our community. Please stay tuned. Enjoy this unbelievably beautiful summer in Newport, Vermont. Thanks very much.